Good evening, and welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, and once again, it's a pleasure to be on the microphones with DJ McGuire.
That's right. Despite my con crud, I am still healthier than Ron DeSantis campaign from Hampton Roads, Virginia.
And Greg Matusak.
A common sense liberal who's having a better week than Casey DeSantis because she now realizes that she's going to spend the rest of her life in Florida.
And another Florida lover, Rebekah Kushmider.
Yes. I aspire to be a Floridian. I want someday to don a pastel cape and stand next to a bobblehead doll as the First Lady of Florida. But for now, I'm in Kensington, Maryland.
For the record, I do like Florida because it's the only state that makes Ohio look good at this point. And not by much.
Hey, Greg, Arkansas is still in the Union.
Yeah, barely. They would trade their union rights for like a coonskin cap and 3 extra teeth.
So getting to the news of the week. First of all, we have some in-house news. The More Perfect Union podcast has sort of made a term go viral, I think, or maybe that's not the right word. But Rebekah mentioned this to us in our little text thread that we keep going between shows. And I said, this has to be in the show because a few weeks ago we were talking about Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's surprise brush with medical care. And I made a joke that I thought maybe it had something to do with a penile implant, which was why they were keeping it quiet. And Rebekah, what happened to you this week that gives us pause about who's listening to our show?
We're following our social media feeds. I got a PR email, and I get these sometimes because I write in the healthcare sector, and so people will send me emails like, hello, if you would like to talk about this dermatological procedure, this dermatologist is ready to take interviews. Well, I got one this week offering me the opportunity to interview a renowned expert on penile implants. He's either pioneered a new device or a new technique. I didn't read close enough to find out. I do not have a penis, so this is not my concern. But yeah, if we wanted to follow up on what did not actually happen to Lloyd Austin, we could have brought in an expert.
I feel really bad. I don't know if you guys knew this aspect of besides us making fun of Lloyd Austin's almost penis implant surgery, which didn't happen. He's being called into Congress to testify about this. Did you guys know this?
No.
Yeah. The Republican held House Arms Defense Group.
Armed Services.
The House.
I knew you guys would correct me.
Of course we would.
But they call him out to inquire about this. The worst part is it's on February 14th. So it's the
Happy Valentine's
Day. He's got to discuss.
He'd be better off getting a penile implant that
He
day.
would have been better because then he could have had a much better Valentine's Day,
But
according to the people who are hopefully going to sponsor our next podcast.
Our next podcast, yeah. I'm actually not mad about there being some investigation into how cabinet secretaries communicate about leaves of absence, even if it is short term. It seems like there were a lot of balls dropped in that situation. Pun not intended, but not bad. And, as far as I had heard, the White House was actually asking all the different agencies to review their contingency plans for situations like that and deliver them to the White House. And I think we could probably use some uniformity and, some very clear protocols. Because having your defense secretary completely he hadn't told his second in command why she was in charge or for how long or what was going on. That's really not okay.
No, it is not. It is not okay. As to whether or not our attempt to influence the cultural zeitgeist has much potency, we will have to.
Oh, stop that!
Well, the reason that I insisted we bring this up is
because dick jokes sell.
Because, well, yeah, and because Everybody by this point has had the experience where you're talking to your significant other or a friend about some restaurant or some product, and all of a sudden that restaurant shows up on your Facebook feed, or that product you start getting ads for, or you texted somebody and all of a sudden that happens. I'm sure everybody here has said, how did they, they've got to be listening through our phones. They've got to be somehow tapping into our social media. So I am going to say the word penile implant as many times as I can get the word penile implant into a sentence referencing penile implants, because I want my Facebook feed to be filled with ads for penile implants tomorrow morning when I wake up.
I feel like if you say penile implant into a mirror 3 times, then I don't know, Ron Jeremy will appear.
A testimonial. Okay, moving on to less potent topics. I know you already made that joke.
I do believe we have stretched this for as long as we can.
It would be hard to do it more.
For the record, if any of this actually survives the cutting room floor, just to let the listeners know, we were planning on spending the first 15 minutes talking about Ron DeSantis' campaign. But of course, he couldn't rise to the occasion and make it that far. So we are stuck with what we're stuck with.
Here, let me help.
Honestly, is there a bigger dick out there than Ron DeSantis?
I don't think so. I was going to help Kevin out real quick, make his wish come true. Here we go. Everyone quiet. Just listen and say, Alexa, search for penile implants. There you go.
Somewhere Kevin's wife is like, why is there an ad for penile implants on this streaming service?
Everyone who's listening to the show in their kitchen is going to be like, Alexa, stop.
Oh my God. All right. So
my favorite.
So Ron DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis. Meatball Ron.
Yeah. No more Ron. Bye-bye, bobblehead.
So, first of all, what did he do wrong? And secondly, what does this portend for the race ahead, if there is one to be had?
I mean, I think what he did wrong was be Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I hate to say the media was unfair, because the media is tough. But I think his big mistake, and if we're going to say this, is he tried at first to out-Donald Donald. And you can't do that in this race. He was like, we're going to get rid of the woke. He took on social issues and he invented social issues. First it was CRT. Then he took on Disney for being Disney. And he was taking on all these causes. Don't say gay. And then when it all came back on him, of course he's awkward. Of course he's terrible. And, the whole thing was just super bizarre.
Yeah, we had a very good friend of mine who sat in with us about a year and a half ago. And she told us that, and I'm not making fun of this person. I love this person as much as I can love a friend and neighbor. But she told us that she was, rooting for Ron DeSantis and thought that he would possibly be the nominee. And I said at that time, I just don't see it. I just don't think this guy is going to catch on with the American people. I just don't think he's that good a politician. And it turns out it was the one thing that I've ever predicted that I was right about.
Yeah, he couldn't take his message national. He's just not the right character for the kind of campaign he was trying to run. He is an odd guy trying to run as Mr. Normal American who can't stand all this odd nonsense that is the woke culture. And it just didn't work. He doesn't have the character to be a bully. And he was trying to campaign as a bully, which is a problem when somebody else can out-bully you, such as Donald Trump. But it's a double problem if you don't have the characteristics of a bully.
I mean, it may in fact be the fact that he's also an idiot. People look at him like he's an idiot because that's there. There's a lot of things that he's against, but he wasn't offering anything to people. He was offering them a chance to hate stuff they already hate, but he wasn't doing it in a way that's as compelling as Trump's little hatred club.
Well, he was offering, and I'm quoting him now, a new generation of leadership. And then within minutes after dropping out of the race, he endorses Donald Trump, 78 years old generation. So it shows that even his message was all bullshit. What can I say?
Yeah. And he was one of the people, even though he was being made fun of, throughout the entire campaign. Meatball Ron DeSantis. We didn't make those names up. Those are Donald Trump's names for him. He turned around and he's like, he's the guy. He pulled a Ted Cruz. He pulled, everybody else from that race who turned around. Lindsey Graham. And it's really, really sad that, except for Chris Christie, who's like, no, you don't get to make fun of me. You don't get to make fun of my wife. You don't get to make fun of my state, what have you, and then have me turn around and endorse you. That's not how this game is played.
Right.
When I was some 7.5 years ago now, when you all asked me if there was a way I would come back to the Republican Party, and this is one of the few predictions that I got right, I said I wouldn't because Donald Trump being nominated would completely change the character of the party and change it infinitely for the worse. And we are seeing that here today. In a Republican Party that is anywhere near, quote unquote, normal, a defeated president with the record that he had in the year 2020 itself would not be anywhere near a nomination. It would be a battle between Haley and DeSantis about the future versus the past. And we'd have all this deep dive about it and all that other kind of stuff. But the fact that Donald Trump is the front runner by far says everything we need to know about what the Republican Party is. It is nothing but a grievance machine for its voters, and it cares nothing about their fellow Americans, let alone anyone else on the planet.
Stuart Stevens was on CNN a little earlier today, and he was talking about this, and he thinks that the Republican Party has to hit bottom. I think a lot of people have analogized it to an alcoholic, where you think they've hit bottom, or they think they've hit bottom, and then you find out there's yet another bottom to be hit. And he doesn't see the party pulling out of this until possibly 2032. That's how bad he thinks it is.
Well, it's an abusive relationship more than.
There's not a bottom until the big money vanishes, until the major donors walk away from the party and say, we cannot participate in this anymore. We will not be financing these campaigns anymore. There's no bottom. They can be as horrible and ineffective as they want because they still pass the occasional tax cut and deregulate stuff through Mitch McConnell's judiciary. So there's no bottom. The hand in glove relationship between limited government and industry will win out.
And this is where I get to pull up one of my old axioms. Relax, Rebekah. It's worse than you think.
I figured it was.
Because the big money is not the problem in the Republican Party today. It's the small money. It's the millions of $5 and $10 contributions coming from people who have been radicalized completely out of their minds. And when the big money goes away, and it will go away at some point, the small money won't. And people like Marjorie Taylor Greene they're not living off of corporate donations. They're living off the radical voters giving them $5 or $10 a month. That's how she does it. That's how Donald Trump does it. The big money is used for party infrastructure, but for individual candidates looking to get votes, it's the small money that matters. And that's not going to change until they lose election after election after election. And those voters simply become deprogrammed by losing over and over and over and over again.
Or there's the generational divide. Young donors are not giving Marjorie Taylor Greene $5, $10. So when her base either goes broke or shuffles off this mortal coil, there's not a generation in place to replace them.
Unfortunately, Rebekah, the data shows that it's not necessarily just the boomer generation that has helped fuel this. It is a large chunk of our generation too.
Yeah, we're not spring chickens, though. It's
we're not. We are not. But we're not all going to die in 10 to 15 years. We're going to be around for at least another 20 to 30. And
that depends if somebody
Trump gets elected.
Yeah, if he starts World War III, then.
If he starts World War III, then we fix global warming and have a different set of problems. I agree.
Okay, I want to move this on because not only do we have the New Hampshire primary on Tuesday, and by the way, I'm going to just make a very quick prediction here. I figure right now it's a two-person race. And by the way, the entire political establishment on both sides of the aisle were saying, gosh, wouldn't it be great if the Republicans could just get all of these people out of the way so it could only be a two-person race and people had a clear choice between Donald Trump and whoever that other person is. Well, now they've got their two-person race, and I predict it will be a one-person race by 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. Anybody disagree with me?
I just wanted to say that people who were getting predictions right, Nikki Haley was correct when she said it was a two-person race after Iowa, and we were all like, but Ron is right there. And she's like, no, he's not. And she was right. Ron is not there.
Yep.
Given the volatility of the New Hampshire primary, because non-affiliated voters can vote, and pollsters have a history of getting that very, very wrong. I am not going to predict what happens in New Hampshire at all. I will throw some if-thens out. If Haley gets within 10 points, that will be enough for a jolt of energy to her zombie campaign to last until she gets crushed in South Carolina.
That's the saddest thing, that she's going to get killed in her home state. Like, that's levels of sad.
She is not going to last until South Carolina. She will not do that to herself.
If she loses by double digits, then she will probably be out sometime this week. If she actually wins, I don't know what the hell's going on.
The world's going crazy. So I would agree with DJ that a lot of it will have to come down to the independent voters and maybe even Democratic voters who, will be showing up, because I believe it is an open primary. But if you ask me, up until this week, Haley probably had a better chance. But her comments that she has made, America's not a racist or was never a racist country, the slavery one, question she couldn't answer, is actually hurting her with independents. It's hurting her with centrists. And it's one thing when you can say, like, okay, America's not racist today, we're a great country. But it's another when she wrote a book talking about her struggles to make it against, horrible racism. And she wrote the book. And then say, like, well, that wasn't racism in America, or that was just these three guys who were just, being shitty, and it just wasn't like America, Yeah, it's really terrible. So I think, up until this week, she probably could have done well, but she's going to get blown out of the water. Yeah.
Greg, I agree with your point about how that will affect moderate voters, independent voters, but I think it's a winning message for the base, and it might interest them in her. For her to have said, no, you're not racist. You're not racist.
Well, of course, that's why she said it. Yeah.
But if people who were, maybe a little bit on the bubble, Trump, am I going to vote for DeSantis? What am I going to do now? They might be like, well, Nikki Haley's nice and she doesn't think I'm racist. I should vote for her. So that it could swing some of the standard Republican base in her direction.
I have to agree with Greg here. I think she loses more than she gains. One thing also to remember is there is a Democratic primary tomorrow.
Yes.
And while Joe Biden has skipped it because New Hampshire basically violated the Democratic Party schedule, there is a very obvious open secret write-in campaign for Joe Biden in the New Hampshire primary. And so a lot of Democrats who might think to go over and try to stop Trump, even if Nikki Haley didn't say stupid things about slavery, they're going to have a pull in another direction saying, hey, write in Joe Biden so this Dean Phillips idiot can finally go away.
Oh, yeah, he's terrible.
I keep forgetting about him. I want to be forgetting about him. Maybe I would like him to let me forget him.
So let's change topics, although you can never really change topics in this campaign because all things come back to you-know-who. Trump and his legal problems are continuing, and he's got a slew of cases. The E. Jean Carroll case is happening now. We're still waiting for the results of the New York case with Letitia James. And, of course, he's got at least two appeals going, including, let's see, he's waiting on the Supreme Court for, which one is that again?
The immunity case, we're still waiting for the D.C. Circuit Court.
That's the one that we're waiting for.
We're waiting for that decision. And then he has a choice to request an en banc hearing, like all of the circuit judges. They can say yes or no to that. And then if they say no, or he doesn't like what the en banc decision is, he can appeal it to the Supreme Court. So it's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. It's a matter of when.
If they take it. if they take it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, they could kick it back down. I can't see them not taking it, though. It's a little too consequential for them not to weigh in.
Okay. I think that decision comes back in the next 3 days. I don't think they'll even make it till Friday without sending that decision. I'm talking about, of course, the 11th Circuit.
Yeah, and I think the weather, like we've been closed for most of the week because of a weather delay. So they may just, that may have slowed up the decision because a lot of people were expecting it by last Friday.
So does anybody want to comment on this whole immunity thing, or is it just too stupid to even comment on?
He is making these remarks in his speeches, and he's saying things that are just astonishingly weird. He's like, we have to have total immunity. You'll have the rogue cop, the bad apple. Perhaps you'll also have that with the president, but there's nothing you can do about that. You're going to have to give the president immunity. I hope the Supreme Court has the courage to do that. And he also went on to say, now look at Truman. If you think of Hiroshima, not exactly a nice act, but it did end the Second World War, probably. He wouldn't be doing that. He'd say, I don't want to do that because my opponents would indict me. You have to give a president full and total immunity. And so this is what he's saying to voters in New Hampshire this week, that you have to give a president blanket immunity for anything he does while in office. And I'm sitting here thinking, do they understand that if the Supreme Court shows up in March and says, yes, full presidential immunity, that applies to the current sitting president?
Well, they know
the
that
next one.
Everybody has been making these comments, for the last 3 weeks about, if you do that, Joe Biden can shoot Donald Trump or have him shot or something. But they know that he would never do anything like that.
Right.
So
that is true.
They have no fear of that.
But think of the things he could do that are not in violation of the law, but he also can't get called on the carpet. For example, Joe Biden, commander-in-chief of the Secret Service. What if he decided that all of Trump's security detail should dress as clowns 24/7, and whenever he's speaking, they should honk
be pulled.
Well, you can't pull. Yeah, you need an act of Congress.
But again, we're saying that a president has immunity to break the law.
Or what if he wanted to totally surveil every move Donald Trump makes? Have a drone hovering outside his bathroom.
That's disgusting. That's worse than the penile implant thing.
Right, and but you could have drones flying over his events.
You could see a lot of confidential records that way.
Yeah, you could. But the drones, they could fly over his events and play Nickelback really loud.
Guys,
they could drop penis-shaped confetti on the crowd.
Guys,
there are a lot of ways that Joe Biden could just troll Trump from now until Election Day.
Yeah, but they have no fear of that.
Immunity.
So let's move on. Yeah,
I think they should have a fear of the clown thing. I'm telling you.
Guys, there's something you're missing about all this.
There's a lot we're missing.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a lot to miss. This is not just a bizarre legal defense he's throwing in the political realm. This is Donald Trump prepping the ground for what he will do if he is back in the White House in 2025. He is telling us that no law will apply to him. He is telling us that he can do whatever the hell he wants, and there is, quote, nothing you could do about it.
So when I was in high school, and pretty much any child who went through Fairfield High School in the 80s, we used to participate in a yearly thing in junior year called the Truman Trial. And it was a mock trial thing. Every social studies class did it.
Putting Truman on mock trial?
Did anyone else do this?
I've never heard of this.
No, but it sounds like a really cool
It was, yeah. It was, and I'm not bragging, but I was lead attorney on our side, and we won. Mainly
which was your side? Was it the bomb Hiroshima side or the oh my god, that's a terrible idea side?
I asked the teacher. I said, "Look, I just want to be lead attorney so I can yell objection." And she's like, "Are you sure you don't want to be Truman?" I said, "Yeah." They gave Truman to a kid who was dumb as a box of rocks. Who I would just say, "So this was a war crime, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we won because he kept admitting it.
So you didn't even have to yell objection.
I kept yelling objection. She threatened to throw me out. But yeah, this was something we all did in public school. You got to hand it to us. I'm told they don't do that anymore. I can say at least 10 to 15 years, all the kids every year. And it was a point of keeping our elected officials accountable.
That's probably where somebody in his campaign got the idea to make that a talking point.
I will double check to see if any Fairfield alumni, but we'll have to see.
In the 49 states of the Union where Robert Taft was not a United States senator, we didn't do anything like that.
Well, let me say this about the immunity thing. First of all, I find it amusing that Trump is making references to, sure, like there's bad apples in the police department, but they need immunity. No, they don't get immunity. That's the whole point. We can take those people to court, and at least a few of them that we know of are doing time because of it.
Qualified immunity is much bigger than it should be.
Correct.
Right. And the other thing that I find somewhat ironic is that we apparently live in a country where at least 50% of the voters believe that a president can and should have complete immunity to even murder someone, and yet an actor who accidentally mishandles a prop on a set should be tried and possibly convicted for manslaughter. Why the president gets immunity, but the actor is responsible for a manslaughter, I don't get that.
Well,
I think there are a lot of people who already believe that presidents have immunity, and they think it's an egregious violation of the trust of America that Trump is being prosecuted at all.
Also, last I checked, Alec Baldwin did not shoot a black or a gay guy.
I was on an X thread yesterday where this topic came up, and it's amazing how many people, and they're all far-right Republicans, I'm sure, but how many people are making up facts about him, that he had a fight with the woman, and clearly it was murder. We all know what a bad temper he has, and it finally went off. I mean, these people
and these
are
the same
insane.
People. Yeah, but they're the same people who were telling me last night all the reasons why I should be happy that Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 people.
Yeah,
and these are the same ones who said the guy who beat up Nancy Pelosi's husband was his lover, and it was some love quarrel.
Yep.
I mean,
they are so mean. They are such bad human beings. Who was it this week? Jamie Dimon famously gave an interview on CNBC. DJ, I don't know whether you read the transcript of that or not.
I read stories on it, so I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
But, he, wide-ranging interview, and he was talking about how the Democratic Party has it wrong about not respecting Trump voters, that it's a danger to disrespect them, and that Trump got a few things right. I'm sorry, I cannot respect people who support not only him, but go after their opponents with the kind of mean-spirited cruelty that I see focused at people like Alec Baldwin, who, whether you like him or not, it was an accident during a rehearsal on the set of a movie. Clearly, there was no malice there. Or, going after the Biden family the way they do, the things they say about Joe Biden, rewriting 50 years of this man's history and his dedication to America in public service. They are such awful human beings to people like that I cannot respect them, even though maybe on some social level I should. I can't.
Well, they don't limit it to what they say about public officials either. The minute you say something negative about Trump in mixed social media company, people will call you a pedophile. I get called a pedophile. Right. Daily on social media. They're like, you're just a pedo.
Right. They have no integrity. They have no soul.
Yeah.
And they will say
they're
anything.
Totally unkind. And the fact that they are begging us to be nice to them and to respect them. I'm like, okay, well, you just called me fat, ugly, stupid, and a pedophile. Explain to me why I should be nice to you.
Yes.
Two things we have to take into account here, though. One, a large number of these people are not actually people. They are Russian bots. Now, far too many of them are actual people who live and breathe.
Yeah, but the fact that Russian bots believe that furthers the cause shows that that's at the core of the cause. The Russian bots
I don't dispute that.
Wouldn't say these lines if the lines weren't.
I don't dispute that at all.
Reflective.
And you're right. The other thing we have to remember is that, as strange as this is to us, there are still swing voters out there. And while Diamond's comments were silly and frankly dumb, there are some issues where Donald Trump has simply gone unchallenged, where he is wrong, but he has gone unchallenged. And that is what helped him in 2016. That's what helped him in 2020. And that's what could help him in 2024. Donald Trump is actually talking about a $300 billion tax increase every single year. But nobody talks about it because they're tariffs on imports. And for some reason, no one is willing to take up the free trade mantle and say that is a gigantic tax increase on all Americans, and it's the dumbest effing thing you could possibly do. Hillary Clinton didn't challenge Donald Trump on that in 2016. That's one of the many reasons she lost. Joe Biden didn't challenge Donald Trump on it in 2020. That's one of the many reasons 2020 was stretched into election week instead of election day, where he would have won with 55% of the vote. And if Joe Biden's not careful, it could give him trouble in 2024. Donald Trump says a lot of dumb things about issues. And in addition to going after him personally, because he deserves it, he needs to be challenged on those issues, and he needs to be shown, or the American people need to be shown, how he is wrong on those issues. That cannot be forgotten in all this nonsense.
Well,
you mean
DJ,
like the fact that the price of soy increased by, what was it, like 67% in 2019?
Yeah,
well,
that's...
Well, since we're on economic issues, let's also take a look at what's happening at the stock market the last couple of weeks, hitting record levels. And I'm feeling richer, but Rebekah, you asked a question. Why are the only thriving parts of the economy the parts that don't have immediate effects on ordinary people? Now, I will acknowledge I am not ordinary.
No,
but,
Kevin, you're extraordinary. We say
I'm
that
extraordinary,
about you all
the time. Yes. But Rebekah, you brought this up, so I'm going to throw it to you. What makes you think that, one, the rise in the stock market doesn't help, quote unquote, ordinary people? And two, do you really believe that the American public is hurting as economically as the Republicans want us to think they are?
No, but I think some of the American people think that they're hurting as bad as the Republicans want them to think they are. And when I said the stock market doesn't have an effect, I meant it doesn't have an immediate effect. Yes, my retirement account looks better this week than it did a week ago, but I'm not going to be touching that for several decades. It isn't bringing down the price of eggs, so to speak. It isn't making gas prices any better. It isn't, helping manage, persistent shortages in certain products because you can't get anything through the Red Sea or the Black Sea right now.
But other things are having an effect on those, and they are moving, according to the economists that I've read, in a positive direction. Now, whether Americans feel that or not.
Right. It's incremental, and it's not something that you're feeling day to day. Like, it doesn't feel like the pressure has lifted, even though it is lifting. And it's interesting that, that life is kind of a lagging indicator of economic progress.
I think we're actually starting to see consumer confidence rise again. It reached a 2-year high last month. So I think the American people are starting to see that the crash they thought was coming is not coming. I think for a lot of Americans, they saw inflation and they presumed, well, inflation is just going to keep happening until a recession hits and we're going to lose our jobs. They are now seeing that does not necessarily have to happen. Most, the polling that I've seen has always shown that most Americans think things are bad and think things will get worse over the next 12 months. I think more Americans are now seeing, as they go through those 12-month period, whatever it is, that things, whatever they think of things, they are not getting worse than they were before. And I think that is finally starting to kick in with a lot of the American people. Now, how much of that kicks in, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think, and I don't think the stock market is the best indicator of this kind of thing, but I do think if you look at consumer confidence, the American people are starting to feel a little bit better about the economy than they did before.
Well, I'll throw in on that because, I have my own economic indicator. I know that economists have all sorts of metrics that they use to analyze the economy, the American economy. My metric is watching television commercials, and anyone who watches enough television these days, be it network television or cable TV, has been inundated with advertisements to switch out your old shower stall with a new jacuzzi shower tub or some other product. And the one-day shower renovation is the hottest thing on television these days. Now, that tells me that there is a massive, massive market for bathroom renovations. And if Americans can drop anywhere between 6,500 up to 15,000, 25,000 or more to renovate their bathrooms, which is a completely discretionary expense, the economy is not in the tatters that Fox and people like Mark Levin would like us to think it is.
I agree completely. I barely clean my bathroom
because you can get a new one.
Because I can get away because I'm about to buy a new one. Exactly. But at the same time, we're seeing gas much lower. And remember all those ads with Dr. Oz talking about crudité being like $57? It's now become
a store that doesn't exist.
In a store that doesn't exist.
In a state he doesn't live in.
Exactly. And this was only 2 years ago. The price of a lot of these things have gone down tremendously. Republicans are not campaigning this year on the high price of food or eggs or milk because, well, looks like something happened, whether it be Biden or an act of God or who knows. I mean,
the egg price thing was driven almost entirely by like an epidemic among chickens that killed a bunch of them. There just weren't as many eggs popping out of chicken butts.
Right.
And now that we've got more chickens, we've got more eggs and they're cheaper.
The other thing to remember, though, is there was also a divide between homeowners and renters. And if you are a renter, it has been brutal for the last several years. If you are a homeowner, you have sat back and watched your home value go up and up. Well, in most markets, just go up and up and up year on year. And I think that may be part of the disconnect we're seeing is that the Democratic base probably has a lot more renters in it than homeowners. So when we talk about polling and we talk about this kind of thing, voters who will probably go to the polls and vote for Joe Biden anyway, whether they feel enthused about it or not, are complaining because there are more renters in the Democratic base than there are in the Republican base. And so the Democratic base is probably feeling the effects of that more than the Republican base is. So the Republican base will just lie and say, of course, the economy is bad because that's their line. But Democratic voters, at least base Democratic voters, they may be feeling rents going up year on year on year, and that's genuinely hurting them.
Well, it is hurting them. And the entry point for buying a house is rising and rising and rising. And the Republicans want to blame Joe Biden for it. And I think Democrats are blaming developers.
I thought I could make it through a whole episode, and especially since DJ said Greg was right earlier, so I was just going to ride that high through the rest of the night. But DJ, I might disagree with you about Democrats having more renters. And, maybe 10, 15 years ago, but we're now seeing the trend of less schooling and even more blue collar Republicans than we have in the past than Democrats. And we still have that age gap, but I think the renter versus homeowner, that gap between Republican and Democrats are probably really, really close. And we've seen a couple bills from the Republicans who are now like realizing it's their base also as far as affordable housing and things like that. So I'm not saying that you're completely wrong, but I might disagree. You're like Kevin wrong at this point.
I'm so glad we got back together to have moments like this.
Funny as hell right there. Kevin wrong.
I hope that catches on. I would like that to go viral just like penile implants.
Alexa, look up Kevin wrong.
That could be your hip hop name, Kevin.
Yes, it could.
When you start your career as a rap lyricist.
For our final segment, let's change topics and talk a little bit about entertainment. Rebekah, I was wondering, have you read the book Zone of Interest?
I have not.
Okay, well, you know that they made a movie out of it, I'm sure.
I don't know that either.
Oh, well, then I'm giving you guys some information. And this is not Kevin wrong, by the way. There's a new film that came out this week.
Oh, I did see you mention this, but yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Zone of Interest. It is
back on track.
I don't want to give it away, but the premise is a family where the husband works at a concentration camp. He works at Auschwitz in like 1943, 1944. And his family home is literally right outside the gates. So the movie takes place in this domestic setting with the literal backdrop being Auschwitz. And I saw this with Jessica the other day. My God, the most powerful, the most haunting, the most moving Holocaust movie I have ever seen. That includes Schindler's List. That includes Sophie's Choice. You name it. Even Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, I'm only joking. But gosh, I urge people to see this movie. The way it's done, the use of sound to indicate what was going on just over the fence, it's like a horror movie, only it's a real life horror movie.
Oh my God, that just gave me chills.
So the book was actually written by one of my favorite authors. I'm surprised I've missed this one. Martin Amis, who was Kingsley Amis's son. And if you haven't read any of his other novels, I don't believe any of them deal with Holocaust, or there's very few historical. He's a brilliant writer who passed away a couple of years ago from lung cancer, I believe. So like Rachel Papers or Money or London Fields or Times Arrow, there's a whole slew of books that he's written that are excellent. So now I have to read this book or see the movie. Let's be honest, I'll probably just see the movie.
It's one of those movies you might want to actually see the movie first before you read the book, because I think, well, I haven't read the book, but my knowledge of the contents of the book is that the movie takes the material and presents it in a cinematic form that I think even a great novel, and I'm not taking anything away from this novel that I haven't read, but I can't believe that it's better than the movie.
Well, which one can I do faster? Can I read the book? Okay, the movie. Okay,
I've seen you read.
No, you've just seen me move my lips while I pretend to read.
So with that, we want to thank everybody for listening, and I'm not going to go through all this stuff because I'm bored with everything that I say every week. We want to thank Alan Keeney for our theme music. And guys, how will you be spending the New Hampshire primary and the week to come?
I will be making New Hampshire primary nachos with the official state animal. I think, what is it, gopher or... I don't know what they ever.
The Granite State, so you can make them extra crunchy.
Oh, okay. I'll put Captain Crunch in them.
There you go. And that's nice and orange too.
It's nice and orange. So yeah.
I think I have to take a kid to the orthodontist, which is probably going to be less painful than hearing Donald Trump declared the victor.